Hello everyone and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today I'm going to be discussing whether West Coast should have been given the assistance package that they got, which was announced today, broken by Twomey. They have been given an end of first round compensation pick, which is pick 19 at the moment, probably going to be pushed back to at least pick 21 after the Oscar Allen and TDK bids come through. And then also 4 rookie list spots that will be available for 2026, 27 and 2028 as well. So a span over 4 years, technically, if you want to include this year. I just sort of want to talk about whether they should be allowed it, because I've seen a lot of stuff online about people saying, oh, they won a flag 7 years ago and that it's completely disproportionate. And I've even seen some people say, where's North Melbourne's assistant package? So I'm sort of going to go through all the assistance packages sort of since mid-2010s, because we did have a fair few in the early 2000s, and they were pick 1, pick 2, pick 3, and they were all handed out, and it was pretty unfair back then, we know that. It's all started from my memory in 2016, where Brisbane Lions got an end of first round pick compensation. In 2018, both Carlton and Gold Coast got allowance as well for extra list spots. And then in 2019, we had the biggest one in recent memory, where the Gold Coast Suns were allowed pick 1 and pick 2. They had pick 1, got pick 2, and that allowed them to draft Matt Rowell and Noah Anderson. And we know how that went this year. One of them was a Brownlow medalist. Then at the end of 2022, North Melbourne were able to get access to 2 start of second round picks, one in that year's draft, 2022, and one in 2023. But with the basis of they had to trade them and get value in return. This is after 4 straight years of under 5 wins, I believe, at the bottom of the ladder. And obviously being 2019, 2020, 2021 and 2022. And they ended up trading that for Griffin Logue and Darcy Tucker in one trade, and then Dylan Stevens in another. And then we lead up to this year where West Coast end up getting that. Now I'll head over to the slide where you can see some tweets and the West Coast announcement that they made about it. So the difference between the North Melbourne one and this West Coast one is that the pick is not needed to be traded to keep it. So North Melbourne had to trade it, which is why they ended up doing those 2 trades, whereas West Coast don't. Now, will they trade it? Yes, because that's what's going to land them Brandon Starcevich. I think that's pretty much a straight swap where Brisbane get that pick, and it's just more points to match a bit on Daniel Annable in the draft this year, who's looking like a top 5 pick. So it's basically, it's just a trade. It's just a piece for the AFL to say, here's more value for you to get a player in without needing to lose your band 1 compensation pick for Oscar Allen, because the free agency system is net in, net out. If they lose Oscar Allen, but then gain Brandon Starcevich, it's going to dilute that pick. And so this is basically the AFL saying, you're a shit team, we'll give you this player, and we'll give you this pick, and just take it, deal with it, whatever. The 4 extra list spots aren't really too much. It basically allows them to get in any academy plays that they get in this year's draft and use it on those rookie spots instead of their actual list, which helps them build that up. And that's absolutely fine. I was very strong in my belief that they will get a pick earlier in the year. I was saying 2022, 23, 24, and 25. 4 straight years of 3 wins or under. And that absolutely determines a priority pick in my opinion. Whilst North Melbourne's is very similar and they got probably more value than theirs compared to West Coast, I think absolutely they deserve one, because, not deserve one, but they should get one. Because whilst North Melbourne's was completely their own fault, delisting 11 players at the end of 2020 or 2019, I can't remember which one exactly, the West Coast Eagles were absolutely hampered by injuries and COVID at the start of 2021, I believe, or the end of 2021, start of 2022, and that completely ruined their list. Whilst there is absolute fault on their management and not being able to rebuild this list and get in younger players beforehand, and that is absolutely their own fault, the start of this and the genesis of their problems came from outside factors. And I think that's why the AFL only gave them 1. The final thing that I want to touch on is, should there be draft packages or assistance packages implemented to teams in the future? And I think it's a really interesting thing, because given we've seen a difference over the last 6 years, including the 2019 one, over how they've done it, I think it's a really interesting talking point, because clubs are going to struggle. It's just the cycle of how teams go. You had the argument of West Coast won a flag 7 years ago, Well, when North Melbourne got it, they made a prelim 7 years before that. So the argument of success isn't really there in my opinion, because success is success. Whether you win it all or not is a different story, but you're still a good team. Your list is still there. And so the argument that West Coast won a flag 7 years ago is null, because North Melbourne were in a prelim 7 years ago before they got theirs. Gold Coast, different story. I think it was their first year, 7 years before they got their own. And Brisbane, 2009, I don't remember how good they were. I don't think they were very good. So there was no real argument there as well. But it's a really interesting topic, because it brings into the question of, should the AFL let clubs be bad, and should they help them when they're really bad? Because every team is going to have their down period, except when you're Geelong. Like every team, even Collingwood, one of the most successful clubs, in 2021 down at the bottom, whilst it was only 1 year, they still showed that they had a bad year. The argument also comes into question of, given West Coast are arguably one of the top 3 biggest teams in the AFL, are they allowed to get an assistance package when it should be for the struggling teams? And West Coast clearly aren't struggling in that factor. But on-field success, they definitely are. I think for the future, it brings into question what the AFL want to do when a team is struggling. Because do they want to allow that cycle to continue, where they're just going to be bad and they're just going to be bad and they're going to have to bank on getting players from the draft, and that is an unreliable way of building success? As we've seen, Brisbane only are this good because they brought in Lachie Neale, they brought in Charlie Cameron, they brought in Joe Danaher, they brought in Josh Dunkley. Now they can add in all these draft picks because they've built a basis of success. Before that, they couldn't, and that's why they were struggling for so long, and that's why Chris Fagan's been such an important piece to this team. But you look at West Coast, they're continuing to rely on it. A lot of it has been poor list management. I'm not doubting that whatsoever. But right now, the only person they've been able to bring in is going to be Brandon Starcevich. They're literally losing their co-captain in Oscar Allen to the best team that literally won a flag 3 days ago as I'm recording this. There is no equality in the game right now. So I think for teams who are struggling to find success on a consistent basis and are over a span of 4 to 5 years winning under 3 games a year, absolutely it determines an assistance package like this. I like the idea of them being traded, and I think it should have been that for this year, because I think it forces them to bring in experienced players rather than the ability to get in another draft pick. Whilst West Coast Eagles do have pick 16 and another later pick as well, because of their trade with Hawthorn, or pick 15 or whatever it is, that they got last year, I think it must have that limiter. Because what North Melbourne did is, the idea was great, whilst the execution you can argue with, because Griffin Logan, Dylan Stevens really haven't done much. I think the idea of them getting experienced players, or players that they can get that they wouldn't originally from the draft, is a really good idea, and it allows the smaller clubs or the least successful clubs to get that help to apply for those younger kids. And I think that's a really important step, because otherwise the kids are going to be the one teaching the kids who are 2 years younger than them how to win, and they've never experienced that. And I think that's a really key part of that. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because it's a really interesting topic. I'm still on the belief that West Coast deserved it, but a lot of people I know disagree with that. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments as well. Make sure to leave a like on the video as well. Subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy this type of content, and I'll see you guys next time.